Hey, welcome to Truth and Reality. I'm Ashley, and this podcast is dedicated to just that, talking about the ups, the downs, the in-betweens of life, and how faith and God fit into all of it. So we are back. It's the new year. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Ashley, happy 2024.
Happy
You know what I'm
2024.
noticing? Your hair is longer in 2024 and my hair is shorter. So we're just starting it out with a bang and doing new things. I like it. You don't have coffee. I don't have coffee. I'm drinking Olipop and you're probably hydrating with some water.
Yes, new goals in 2024.
New goal.
Drinking more water.
Drinking less Starbucks. That's mine, but that's a whole nother podcast for a whole nother day about the amount of Starbucks you and I consume and that we shouldn't. And so we're getting better at that in 2024.
It is true. It is true. Well,
Yeah.
we're back. We're excited about this year and all that God has for us in talking and discussing and sharing with you. Melissa and I had been talking about the New Year's, and with January comes New Year's resolutions, new ideas, a lot of goals, and just different ways that we process reflecting on the previous year and moving into what's coming in the next year. And so we were just talking about that as friends, and we both thought individually, hey, let's have that conversation. And Melissa and I both process differently. We think through things differently and how we went about it. So we'd like to invite you in on the conversation and just kind of talk how we process, our gratefulness, our gratitude, and what's happened in 2023, and then what are we looking towards or for in 2024. So Melissa, how about you start talking about last year? How did you process that, or what did you do as we transitioned from December to January?
Yeah, I think everybody's end of the year looks a little bit different. What I try and do, and I'm not good at it every year, but this particular last year or December, the kids and I stepped out of the picture and went away. And so I think it was good for me to have a posture of gratitude and write down all the good things that had happened. And we really even just, it involved my kids writing down, things that they were grateful for. And along with me, just writing down some really big wins. I think you and I talked one day at the gym, like, Israel wasn't planned and it just happened. And it was one of the biggest wins for me that happened on the, of the year, getting the tattoo, things like that, the amount of healing that took place. And so I think for me personally, I try and step out of the busyness of life, even if it means getting away to a cabin or just, spending time away from even social media, to take time to reflect and like what worked in 2023. Okay, what didn't work? And so before I even go into goals or even move into January, I can say personally, I'm not someone who sets goals January 1st. I'm still reflecting in January 1st of things that happened even at the end of the year, and did that work right? And so I think, I ended 2023 really in a posture of gratitude and gratefulness for all of the wins, even though there was some really hard challenges. It was a hard healing year, but yet I made progress. And so sometimes hard isn't always bad. It takes work, and you and I have talked through that. And so I think I'm happy to have a new year. I think you and I talked, like, I was glad that 2023 was done and I was ready to start a new year. And I think you felt a little bit differently. And so that's where I ended. Tell me about you. What did you think and where did you land as far as in December come all the way moving up into the beginning of January?
Yeah. Well, I like how you said things were hard, but hard doesn't mean bad. Like sometimes we associate difficult times or hard with negative or bad, or, because sometimes you feel that pressing going through it. But honestly, both of us have talked that that's often where we feel we have had the greatest growth, or where God meets us in those spaces. And that's the biggest relationship building, anyways, for me as well. I also process 2023, or, the past, and then moving into the new year now. After Christmas, I have a full week the last couple of years where I'm solo and my kids are off with their dad. And so it gives me time to sit and process and reflect. And this year was interesting because as Christmas ended and I had that space and time to journal, write, and reflect, I did not want 2023 to end. I loved 2023. There were highs, there were lows, there were things that happened, but I really didn't want it to end. It was a really big year, I feel like, of growth, like you said, of healing. There were some challenges, there were financial challenges, there were struggles or portions I walked through, but I really loved 2023. And as I sat and reflected on my goals, because I also wrote goals, it was interesting that some of my goals, like you said, happened, took place. I met the goal. Some of them I didn't. But
Yeah.
the greatest thing that I noticed about 2023 for me is that last December, I sat and I wrote goals. And then I also felt like God gave me two words. He gave me the word curiosity and presence. And so
Yep.
reflecting over that whole year, it was so interesting. I felt like God did the most and the most things happened out of those two words, curiosity and presence, and less about my goals. Like the biggest things for me that
Mm.
happened were not on my goal list. I really
Yeah.
dove into hearing the voice of God, spending
Yep.
time with him, that relationship built. We went to
Yep.
Israel, which was another chance to say yes to something new, something that stretched us, something that brought
Yep.
more presence with God and with others in my life. I started a nonprofit, right? And so that's
Yeah.
news to people too. And I met people on that trip and people from church who have kind of come around and started moving that nonprofit along. And so many of the wins were not on my goal list, which was
Yeah.
so interesting to see.
Yep.
Coming back. So that's kind of how I process 2023. And like you said, write it down, gratitude, just reflecting on all that happened, even in the struggles, like how did God show up, right?
Right. Well, and I think you and I talked about that. Some of the hard was actually healing. And so I feel going into 2024, typically, I'll be honest, January can feel a little heavy for me and a little hard of like starting over another year of doing life like this, like something I didn't think. I'm going into it totally with a different attitude, a different perspective this year. Almost like I'm more going to be surprised by new and exciting things. I was surprised
Mm-hmm.
that Israel took place. Even this podcast has been so life-giving. This was a surprise that this was something new that would happen, and God knew, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, you and I like stretching, being comfortable in my story and sharing and being with you. And so it's been exciting to have a different outlook going into 2024, So I mean,
Yeah.
I was ready for it, and I think you were missing, loving or holding on to 2023, but I think they're both good perspectives. But I think
Yes.
I want to encourage people listening here today that there'll be probably exciting things happening in 2024, or maybe things you won't expect. You and
Yeah.
I think the Israel thing was something new, right? And I think as much as we can plan, there's moments of things that surprise us, and stretch us, and we grow in those areas, even though it's hard in the moment. And so I think it just shapes how we look at January, is that trying to look at it in a posture of there are going to be good things ahead. There might be
Yeah.
struggles. You and I have already had some struggles in the beginning of January,
Mm-hmm.
but yet I'm looking for the good. I'm looking for the moments, even if they're small.
Yeah. Yeah, which is true. And the interesting thing is too, like a lot of what we happened in our lives wasn't on our goal sheet. And I think it was interesting,
Mhm.
like you're saying, leaving room for God to surprise you. And this year, as I was looking towards 2024 and journaling, I didn't write goals, which was
Yeah.
funny. My goals, because of what happened last year, was like, these were my goals, but here's what happened. And yeah, God used
Yep.
them, and yeah, God worked through, and I had some goals accomplished. But I more sat this year and like said, okay, God, you already know what's going to happen. Just like you said,
Hmm.
he already knows. He has surprises. He has
Hmm.
things maybe that we know are coming. And so
Yep.
I sat this year and said, okay, God, do you have a word for me? Do you have a verse? Do you have something you want me to focus on? What do you have for 2024? So instead of sitting
Right.
here going, okay, I think I should work out more or drink more water or, try to lose weight or try to
Yep.
get back into teaching in this capacity, all these things that we
Yep.
think we should do. I sat and I said, okay, God, what do you have for 2024? And it actually, like you said, surprised me because I felt like he
Right.
gave me a word. And no, God's not just going to use the one word. He can use all different
Yep.
facets and more. But he gave me a word that was shocking. And I was like, okay, well, how do you want me to use that? And I'll just say it. My word is family. And to me, that was
Yeah.
surprising. But I
Yeah.
was like, okay, well, what do you mean family? Like, yes, I love
Yeah.
my children. I love my family, investing in time with my family. But I took that word and I felt like God said, what does family look like in your nonprofit? What does family
Hmm.
look like in your career? What does family look like that's kind of out of the box? And how can you include others in family? And to be honest, he brought to mind my friend's dad. I'm gonna start crying.
Yeah.
My friend's dad who passed away last year, and he was
Mhm.
like Les, he made people family. I want this year to be about relationship.
Mhm.
So the word he
Yep.
gave me, I'm generally a product, move through it, let's have steps and
Yep.
sequences. And this year I felt like he said family is about relationship. And just
Mm.
seeing a model of somebody else in my life who made people instant family and had relational
Mhm.
qualities, I felt like he's like, that's what I want this year to be about. And that really had to do with being present too. So it's just absolutely
Yep.
nothing I had on my mind, right? When I was
Yeah.
thinking of
Yep.
goals, I'm like, okay, let's write 3 books. Let's do more podcasts. He's like, those are products. What are we going to do
Right.
relationally? Which I thought was really
Yep.
cool. So that's kind of how I
Yep.
processed my goals or,
Yep.
focus this year. Yeah. How about you? What did you think through?
Yeah. And I still am working on mine. Like the kids and I came up with some last night of just being more active or, less tech and more, time together or board games. I think, stepping out and as we, stepped away over the holidays, being away somewhere warm to help me really realize of that pace I somehow need to bring back into life here. And so life is so busy here. You and I talk about it. The pace feels fast. And so I'm learning to be more present. And even over the holidays, I think you and I talked, Christmas was probably the least amounts of presents that I received from anyone. And that was because I asked that. And it was the least amount of presents I gave my kids because I said, really, it's about making memories and doing things together. And I felt like that was the shift for us, even moving into January and this year, is making memories together and being present. And that's hard, I think, in a busy life that we're in. We're at sports and running and 4 kids. And so, and I think I'm facing hard things this year. And so, we'll dive into it a little bit more, but next month is the anniversary of Matt's passing and it's 4 years. Typically I go away. And I really feel in my heart like to face it this year, to face hard and to face new things that maybe aren't as hard anymore. And so I think I'm working on courage. We're working on being brave in new things. And so I think I'm not fully have all my goals set in front of me. I have a lot of fitness goals and things like that. I turned 46 in a couple of weeks, but I think they're slowly rolling out. So I want to encourage people listening too. Like if you haven't set goals yet and it's the end of January or mid-January, it's okay. Even just sometimes it's weekly goals, right? Or it's like a daily goal. I'm trying to make my bed and do the dishwasher before 8 o'clock. Little things just as progress of movement moving forward, and I think you have to look at progress is that it can be really big things and it can be small things, but ultimately it's progress. Ultimately it's movement,
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And it's interesting because we see a new year and we're like, okay, what's going to change? But what's interesting is it's like, no, I think the opposite of trying to change yourself is trying to be like, okay, who
Yep.
am I? Who did God make me to be? What is it where I can step towards being a healthier version of me or, getting into healthy habits and routines. But what's interesting is we always do this in January, obviously, because that's our new year. But it's the
Yeah.
opposite of the pull of the season. The pull of the season is slow down, it's winter, get cozy. And so
Yeah.
I kind of
Yeah.
and which is why we didn't necessarily put this out January 1st, is because I
Yeah.
kind of like taking January, taking the beginning of the year, really being reflective, really sitting with God and saying, what do you see for my year? What do you see as something
Yep.
you want me to walk towards or work on or highlight? Like you said, being present with your kids, being present in the midst of hard situations. Like that
Yeah.
in itself is a huge goal of being willing to sit in things with people and process. And that really is what grows growth in us, right? And it's not a list
Right.
or a check, what do I say? Check
Yeah.
off the box. So,
Yeah.
so I love that you said that. So I would just encourage people to, even if you have already made lists, to sit with God and say,
Yeah.
what do you have for 2024? Because you already wrote it. He already knows what's going to
Yeah.
happen. So what do you want me
Yeah.
to focus on? Not knowing, not needing to know, oh, this and this and this is going to happen, but knowing how do
Right.
you want me to be in 2024 to walk
Right.
into whatever you have for me? So I love that one of
Right.
yours is presence too.
Well, and I think I've had to surrender some of it, right? Like some of the unknown. I don't know how February is going to look. I haven't been home ever. And I'm just using myself as an, illustration for people listening. Typically in years past, and this, I would always go away for the anniversary or even go away for my birthday because it was too hard to face. And I felt like God was saying to me, if you're healed, you can face it. if I really healed you, then you can face the day. And so it's like, I look at now little challenges or with the kids or moments, of things that we have struggled with. It's like facing those moments or facing those hard things and, not downplaying that it's still hard. It just looks different. And so I think, yeah, courage has been a great word that we're using in our house, that we're doing hard things, courageously. And so, yeah, every year looks a little different. And, I think our outlook is important, right? Trying to be positive, leaving behind, right? Some of the disappointments or some of the struggles in 2023. You and I both had them. And I think knowing it's a new year, right? Setting our mindset. You and I have talked about just, even our thinking, the way, we look at how we're going into the new year is so important. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I agree that mindset of expectancy on what God's going to do. Like we both said it. And when we talked about our goals, not on here, we were talking to each other or just kind of our focus for 2024. Like you said that, you said, God's going to surprise you. God's going to surprise you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hope he does. Right. And he will, because we don't know it's coming. But it's that idea of like, we know where we're looking. We know where we're moving. We know that God has us. So taking those daily things, I love how you said that before, like maybe it's just a daily thing, a daily goal that you're like, hey, what do you want me to do today, God? Or what do you have on your heart for this? And taking those steps. I love that perspective too, because I feel like one thing God's really put on my heart in the last 2 months is if I'm so focused on the future and I'm so focused on what's coming, I'm going to miss out on now. And I feel like his gift
100%.
to us is now, because if it's not bad to have goals, everyone has goals, everyone has ideas, but if we're living out there, we miss out on what's now. And I felt like he said, a life well lived is lived now. It's not waiting for someday when, it's actually lived now. And so I felt like that's been a huge challenge to me too, just being present, being with my kids, like knowing it's okay. I don't know what job I'm going to have in the fall. I'm going to get a job in the fall.
Yes.
Like knowing it's okay. I don't know. God knows. And as I take the steps of today, whatever that is, he's going to walk me towards that. And I feel like that's been a huge learning curve from 2023 for me of practicing presence and curiosity, that God's going to get me to where he was going to get me. And I didn't even know where it was. Like I had no idea that I was going to start a nonprofit. I had no idea that Providence Media would lead me to book publishing and record publishing and things like that. Like what? That's crazy. Right. But God knew, and being able to trust him in that has been a huge work for me in 2023. And so I'm like, okay, I'm excited for 2024. I'm like, what's going to happen?
Right. And I think that's a good, perspective to have, is like the expectancy of something, right? It might feel a little scary. It might be something new for people listening. It's like, it might be some things that he puts on your heart that you're like, there's no way. I know you and I have talked personally about some of the goals and dreams that we have for this year. Some of mine are super scary, and you have really helped walk alongside me and encouraged me, and just even practical steps to do it. So I think it's so great to find those people that will be in your corner that say, hey, I want to share a dream with you, or I want to share something that's on my heart that I want to do in 2024. Can you hold me accountable? And you do a great job doing that with me. So I think it's just great to have that, just along the journey, so I'm excited for our viewers and people listening, just that, I believe that there's great things ahead for them too. And to leave aside, I really feel that in my heart, is to leave aside the disappointments that happened in 2023. You and I had some, and we don't always verbally talk about them or, process them on here, but I think everybody kind of had maybe some highs and some lows that were hard. And I think go into 2024 with a fresh perspective of anticipation that there are good things coming.
Absolutely. I agree. And like that reflecting of 2023 kind of builds the foundation, knowing that whether it is high or low, however, whatever comes, that like that consistency of God getting you through that really builds your faith to know like, okay, no matter what comes in 2024, he's going to get me through. And yes, there are going to be highs, and yes, there'll be lows, and yes, there'll be medium and like whatever that's called, a plateau. And just knowing that like, okay, reflecting and that gratitude really lays the foundation for trust and hope for the future, which I think both of us have practiced and are saying. So just encourage you, whoever's listening, as you walk into 2024, start with gratitude. That's what we'd say. Start with gratitude, and then sit with God, right? And say, okay, what do you have planned? What do you want me to focus on? And most of the time, we don't know what's coming. We can have goals. Goals are great. Goals are positive. I would never say to not have goals in your life, but
Yeah.
sitting
Yep.
differently and being like, okay, who do you want me to become? Or what area do you want to bring healing
Mhm.
to? Or how do you want me to process moving forward? Because God knows
Yeah.
actually exactly what we need. And so I love
Yep.
that. And it leaves us with curiosity. And I'm excited for all the things coming in 2024.
So am I.
Don't
I can't,
don't even know what they are, but I'm excited.
me neither. I have no idea, but I'm excited. So yeah.
Well, good. Well, thanks,
Yeah.
Melissa. It was fun. Stay tuned, everybody.
So
We'll be
much.
back.
Yeah, we got great things in store coming and we're working on, so I can't wait for the next one. So yeah, it'll be good.
Awesome. Well, check us out at Peace Runs Deep and stay tuned for more podcasts. Have a good start to 2024, everybody.